The rain in Hollowbrook, Kansas, did not wash the town clean. It merely made the grime slicker, turning the dust of the dying agricultural hub into a thick, gray paste that coated the boots of 8-year-old Jake Corbin. He shouldn't have been out. The curfew was strict, sheriff's orders, school board's orders, his mother's frantic, tearful orders. Don't go near the old waterworks. Don't talk to strangers. Come straight home. But the paper boat he had folded from his math homework had slipped from his fingers into the roadside gutter, and the current was fast, carrying it toward the rusted moor of the storm drain at the edge of the Millbrook industrial district. Jake ran, his yellow raincoat a bright bruise against the desaturated palette of the afternoon. The storm drain loomed ahead, a concrete throat choked with dead leaves, and the detritus of a town that had stopped caring. The boat vanished into the dark. Jake skidded to a halt, knees muddy, peering into the gloom. It smelled wrong down there, not just of sewage and rot, but of something older, like a wet dog left in a hot car, like copper pennies, like the musk of a circus tent folded away while still damp. "Hiya, Jakey." The voice didn't come from the dark. It came from everywhere at once, a wet, playful sound that vibrated in the boy's molars. Jake jerked back, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. From the shadows of the culvert, 2 eyes drifted forward. They were blue, then yellow, then a burning, molten silver. A face emerged, caked in white grease paint that was beginning to crack like dry drywall. The clown smiled, and the smile kept going, stretching past the limits of human anatomy until it threatened to bisect the skull. He held the paper boat in one gloved hand, and in the other, a bright red balloon that defied the wind, floating perfectly still. "You look like a nice boy," the clown said. Its voice dropped an octave, losing the playful lilt, becoming something guttural and wet. "I bet you have a lot of friends. I bet they taste sweet." Jake scrambled backward, his instinct screaming that this wasn't a man in a costume. The air pressure dropped. The sound of the rain faded into a dull, rhythmic thrumming, like a giant heartbeat. "I want my boat," Jake whispered, though he didn't. He wanted to run until his lungs burned. "Take it," the clown offered. The eyes drifted apart, one looking at Jake, the other rolling up into its skull, revealing the whites. "Take it, Jakey." "And a balloon?" "Do you want a balloon?" The creature's jaw unhinged, with a sound like wet leather tearing. "They float, you know. They all float down here, and you will too." Jake screamed, turning to run, but the pavement seemed to stretch, the distance to his house elongating into infinity. A gloved hand, extending on an arm that possessed too many elbows, shot out from the drain. It didn't grab him. It enveloped him. The clown lunged, its face opening into a tunnel of serrated needle teeth, revealing a throat that glowed with a maddening, dead orange light. The last thing Jake Corbin felt was not pain, but a terrible, freezing cold, and the sensation of being consumed by a hunger that had no bottom. Then there was a wet pop, and the street was empty, save for a single red balloon drifting lazily into the gray sky. The 1967 Chevy Impala rolled into Hollowbrook 3 days later, its engine a low, throaty growl that cut through the silence of the grieving town. Dean Winchester killed the ignition outside the motel, the sleepy silo, which looked exactly as depressing as the name implied. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, eyes scanning the perimeter. The town felt heavy. It wasn't just the low barometric pressure of the brewing storm, it was a spiritual weight, a thick psychic static that made the hair on his arms stand up. "You feel that?" Dean asked, not looking at his brother. Sam Winchester was looking at a file in his lap, but his eyes were unfocused. He rubbed his temples, a habit he'd developed since the cage, since Lucifer had spent a year peeling his mind apart like an onion. Yeah, Sam said, his voice tight. Like the air is electrified. High emph? Feels stickier than that, Dean muttered. He opened the door, stepping out into the humid air. He adjusted the suit jacket that barely concealed the Taurus PT-92 tucked into his waistband. Let's go see the sheriff. Maybe he can tell us why a veteran hunter like Nathan Cross ended up dead without a scratch on him. They found Sheriff Marcus Duval at the station, a man who looked like he hadn't slept since the Reagan administration. He stared at their badges, Agents Rose and Slash, with bloodshot eyes that held no skepticism, only relief and a profound, trembling exhaustion. The office was cluttered with missing person flyers, a mosaic of smiling school photos that transformed the corkboard into a shrine of failure. Federal agents, Duval said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. I didn't think the Bureau handled this kind of thing. Unless you boys are the specialized unit Cross mentioned before he died. We worked with Agent Cross, Sam lied smoothly, his empathetic Fed persona sliding into place. We're here to finish his investigation. Sheriff, the report said Cross died of cardiac arrest? Duval laughed, a dry, brittle sound. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the rain-slicked street. Cardiac arrest. That's what the coroner put down, because scared to death doesn't look good on a death certificate. But I saw him, agents. I found him in the old pumping station at the waterworks. Duval turned back, and his hands were shaking, his face. He was screaming. But there was no sound. His eyes were wide open, capillaries burst, and his hair, Duval swallowed hard. Nathan Cross was 35 years old. When we found him, his hair was stark white. Dean exchanged a look with Sam. Hunters died bloody. They died screaming, sure, but they died fighting. To die of sheer fright? That was a rookie way to go. And Nathan Cross wasn't a rookie. He'd hunted shapeshifters in New Mexico and a nest of vamps in Austin. Any leads on the Corbin boy? Dean asked, steering the conversation to the immediate threat. Gone, Duval whispered, just like the others. No bodies, no ransom notes. Just gone. And the witnesses? Kids mostly. They talk about a clown, a dancing man. We have a curfew, but it doesn't matter. It's like the town is eating them. The investigation that afternoon yielded nothing but dead ends and a rising sense of nausea. The EMF meter in the Impala was erratic, spiking randomly in places where nothing had happened, then going dead silent at the crime scenes. It wasn't the rhythmic pulse of a ghost or the static of a demon. It was a chaotic interference pattern, like a radio tuned between stations. Hollowbrook was a ghost town in the making. The adults walked with their heads down, eyes fixed on the pavement. The few children they saw were being dragged by the wrists, hurried into cars or houses, and everywhere there was a subtle optical wrongness. Shadows seemed too long for the time of day. The rust on the street signs looked like dried blood. By the time they returned to the sleepy silo, the sun was setting, casting the town in a bruised purple light. They had commandeered Nathan Cross's personal effects from the sheriff, a battered duffel bag, and a leather-bound journal. Dean cracked a beer, the hiss of the tab loud in the cramped room. He sat on the edge of the bed watching Sam flip through the journal. So, what are we dealing with, Sammy? Vengeful spirit? Maybe a Pied Piper type? Sam didn't answer immediately. He was staring at the last few pages of Cross's journal. The handwriting, usually neat and precise, had deteriorated into jagged, frantic scrawls. The ink was pressed so hard into the paper it had torn through in places. It's not a spirit, Sam said, his voice low. He felt a phantom pain in his ribs, a memory of the cage as he read the words. Dean. Listen to this. Cross was tracking a pattern. He found references to something similar. Disappearances. Mass tragedies. He thought it was a tulpa at first. a thought form brought to life by collective fear. But he changed his mind. Sam turned the book around. On the final page, scrawled in thick black marker, was a drawing. It was crude, terrified, a cluster of orange circles spiraling inward. Beneath it, Cross had written 3 sentences. It knows I'm here. It knows my name. It's not a monster. It's a mouth. Dean stared at the drawing. For a second, just a fraction of a second, the orange circles seemed to rotate on the page, glowing with a faint, heatless luminescence. Dean blinked, and the motion stopped. He took a long pull of his beer, the taste metallic in his mouth. A mouth, Dean repeated, masking the sudden chill that ran down his spine with a scoff. Great. So, we find the teeth. We kick them in. Standard procedure. I don't think so, Sam said, looking out the window where the streetlights were flickering. Cross had warding sigils all over his gear. Anti-possession, hex bags, salt rounds. None of it was touched. Whatever killed him, it didn't care about our rules. Outside, across the street, a single red balloon drifted past the window, moving against the wind, hovering for a moment as if peering into the room before floating up into the dark. The Millbrook Waterworks was a brutalist concrete scar on the edge of town, abandoned since the mid-90s when the chemical runoff from the textile plant made the water taste like pennies. Now, it was just a dark throat leading down into the earth. Dean cut the chain on the perimeter fence with a pair of bolt cutters, the metal snapping with a sound like a pistol shot in the quiet night. He tossed the cutters into the duffel bag and pulled out his shotgun, racking the slide. Rock salt and iron rounds, he muttered. If it's a spirit, this stings. If it's a monster, it hurts. If it's something else, well, at least it makes a loud noise. Sam stepped through the gap, flashlight beam cutting through the misty rain. He was still thinking about the journal. Dean, I reread the last few pages. Cross wasn't talking about a history here, Sam said. He found Professor Warrington's notes from the local college. Warrington was trying to look through the veil, trying to find the Eater of Worlds in some other dimension. He didn't find a pattern in Kansas. He invited one in. So we're dealing with an illegal alien, Dean grunted, moving toward the main intake building. Great. Let's hope it didn't bring friends. They breached the main doors. The air inside was stagnant, heavy with the smell of wet rot and something strangely sweet, like cotton candy left to dissolve in a puddle of gasoline. The silence was absolute. No rats skittering, no water dripping. Just a suffocating stillness that pressed against their eardrums. They moved tactically, checking corners, sweeping the flashlight beams across rusted catwalks and dark pools of stagnant water. The architecture didn't feel right. The tunnels seemed to curve in ways that defied the blueprints Sam had downloaded. Pipes twisted into non-Euclidean knots. Shadows stretched toward the light instead of away from it. This isn't just a lair, Sam whispered, shining his light on a wall covered in gray mold that formed spiraling, fractal patterns. It's terraforming. It's changing the environment to match wherever it came from. Yeah, well, I'm gonna evict it, Dean said, though his grip on the shotgun was white-knuckled. They reached the central cistern, a massive, cathedral-like chamber where 5 main tunnels converged. In the center of the dark water, a small island of debris had formed, and floating above it, tethered to nothing, was a single red balloon. Dean leveled the shotgun. Sam, I see it. Pop it. Sam raised his Taurus, aiming for the balloon. But before he could squeeze the trigger, a sound echoed through the chamber. It was the sound of a slide whistle, comically loud and absurdly out of place, followed by the squeak of oversized shoes on wet concrete. From the shadows of the Tunnel 3 output, a figure emerged. It moved with a disjointed marionette grace, limbs flopping loosely, then snapping taut. The clown stepped into the halo of their flashlights, its white suit glowing in the harsh lead beams. Visitors. The clown threw its hands up, a gesture of mock surprise. Its voice was a high, wheezy titter. "We don't get many visitors down here. The adults are usually so boring, so tough, so chewy." Dean didn't hesitate. He fired. The boom of the shotgun was deafening in the enclosed space. The blast of rock salt hit the clown square in the chest. That impact would knock a ghost into oblivion or stagger a vampire. The clown didn't move. The chest of its suit tore open, puffing out a cloud of white dust, but there was no blood. The creature looked down at the hole, then looked back up at Dean. Its face fell into a mask of exaggerated sadness. "That wasn't very nice," it said. The voice dropped, becoming the sound of grinding stones. "Do you think your salt hurts me? Do you think your little toys work here?" Sam fired 3 rounds from his 9mm into the creature's head. The bullets struck with wet sounds, creating ripples in the grease paint, but the wounds healed instantly, the skin knitting together like time running backward. It smiled, and the eyes shifted. The left one focused on Dean. The right one drifted lazily toward Sam, glowing with a dead yellow light. "I know you," the clown whispered, and the voice seemed to originate from inside their own skulls. It looked at Sam, the boy with the demon blood. "You taste like ash and failure. Do you miss the cage, Sammy? Do you miss the fire? He's still in there, you know, screaming your name." Sam stumbled back, his breath hitching. The chamber flickered. For a second, the clown wasn't a clown. It was Mark Pellegrino, wearing a white suit, his face marred by burns. "No," Sam thought, clamping down on his mind. "It's a hallucination. It's reading me." The creature snapped its head toward Dean. "And the big brother," it crooned. "Daddy's little soldier. You carry so much guilt, Dean. It's heavy. It's delicious. You couldn't save Mom. You couldn't save Dad. You couldn't even save yourself from the rack." Dean roared, racking the shotgun and advancing. "Shut up! Make me," it giggled. The clown's jaw unhinged. It didn't just open. It split the head apart. A set of 3 mandibles erupted from the mouth, lined with rows of crystalline, razor-sharp teeth. But beyond the teeth, deep in the throat, Dean saw it. A pulsating, orange light. The Deadlights. Looking at it felt like looking into the sun. Dean's vision swam. A wave of primal, paralyzing terror washed over him, not the adrenaline fear of a hunt, but the helpless, infantile terror of a prey animal caught in a trap. His arms felt like lead. The shotgun felt like a toy. "You aren't real," Sam yelled, his voice shaking but loud. He grabbed Dean's shoulder, anchoring him. "Dean, it's an illusion." The creature hissed, snapping its jaws shut. It didn't like the interruption. It didn't like the lack of belief. "Not real?" It snarled, its form vibrating, the clown suit shimmering into something chitinous and armored for a split second. "I am the only thing that is real. I am the Eater of Worlds. And you? You are just meat that hasn't been salted yet." The water in the cistern exploded upward. Not water, arms. Hundreds of grey, rotting arms shot up from the pool, grasping at the brothers. "Run!" Dean yelled, the paralysis breaking as survival instinct kicked in. They scrambled back up the intake tunnel, the sound of wet, slapping footsteps close behind them. Maniacal laughter echoed off the walls, distorted and overlapping, sounding like 100 clowns laughing in a canyon. They burst out into the night air, lungs burning, crashing through the fence and tumbling onto the wet grass. Dean spun around, weapon raised, aiming at the dark opening of the waterworks. Nothing came out. Just the wind. And a single red balloon that drifted out of the tunnel floated past them and popped with a sound like a breaking bone. Dean stared at the empty dark, his chest heaving. He looked at his shotgun, then at the hole in the fence. He touched his face. He was sweating cold, clammy sweat. "Sammy," Dean panted, wiping rain from his eyes. That wasn't a shifter. That wasn't a demon. Sam was leaning against the Impala, pale as a sheet. He looked at his brother, his eyes wide and haunted. "Castile," Sam said, his voice trembling. "We need to call Cass. Now." The retreat from the Millbrook Waterworks was not a tactical withdrawal. It was a flight. Dean drove the Impala like he was trying to break the sound barrier, the tires screaming against the wet asphalt as they tore back toward the neon sanctity of the sleepy silo motel. Beside him, Sam was white-knuckled, gripping the dashboard, his breathing shallow and erratic. They didn't speak. The silence in the car was heavy, filled with the unspoken knowledge that their bullets that had put down werewolves, shapeshifters, and demons, had passed through the clown like it was made of smoke and bad dreams. Back in the motel room, Dean paced. He moved like a caged animal, stripping off his wet jacket and tossing it onto the cheap duvet. He checked the salt lines at the door and windows 3 times. It was a reflex, a comfort blanket, but deep down, he knew the salt was useless. He had seen the thing's chest knit back together. He had seen the physics of the world bend around it. "Call him," Dean barked, cracking a fresh beer and downing half of it in one swallow. "Put Cass on the speaker." Sam was already dialing. The phone rang twice before the familiar, gravelly voice of the angel Castiel filled the room. "Sam." "I was occupied. Heaven is currently in a state of administrative restructuring." "Cass, we need you," Sam said, his voice trembling slightly. "We're in Kansas. Hollowbrook. We found something, or something found us. It looks like a clown, but it's not a shapeshifter. It knew about the cage. It knew things only a telepath would know, but I couldn't sense a mind. It felt like staring into a black hole." There was a long pause on the line. "Describe it," Castiel said, his tone shifting from distracted to grave. "It changes," Dean interjected, leaning over the phone. "Teeth like needles, eyes that drift apart. And when it opened its mouth, Cass, there was a light. Orange. Bright as a welder's torch. I looked at it, and I felt like I was falling." "The Deadlights," Castiel whispered. The name carried a weight that seemed to lower the temperature in the room. "Listen to me very carefully. Do not engage. Do not look into the light." "What is it?" Dean demanded. "Is it a demon? Is it Lucifer's second cousin? What?" "It is older than that," Castiel said. "Before the archangels, before the darkness was sealed, there was the void. The Macroverse. Most of it is empty, but there are things that swim in the deep water outside of creation. Pure consumption. They do not follow the laws of physics or soulcraft because they were not written by the same author. If one has breached the veil, how do we kill it?" Dean cut in. "I don't care about its family tree, Cass. How do we kill it?" "I don't know," Castiel admitted, the admission terrifying in its honesty. "I am coming. But my grace, I do not know if it will affect something that does not belong to this reality. Stay inside. Keep your minds guarded. It feeds on fear, Dean. If you are afraid, you are already bleeding." The line went dead. Dean stared at the phone, his jaw set. "Great. So we're fighting a space alien that eats fear. and the angel has no idea what to do. Tuesday. We need supplies, Sam said, standing up. If salt doesn't work, maybe we need something stronger. Ancient. I saw an occult shop 2 towns over on the GPS. Maybe they have something that predates the Enochian warding. It's 2 a.m., Sam. I'm not sleeping, Dean. Are you? Dean looked at the beds. The thought of closing his eyes, of seeing those orange lights again, made his stomach turn. Let's go. They didn't make it to the occult shop. 5 miles outside of Hollowbrook, on a stretch of lonely highway bordered by dense cornfields, the Impala sputtered and died. Dean cursed, steering the heavy car onto the shoulder as the electrical systems failed completely. The headlights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Alternator? Sam asked, reaching for his flashlight. Impossible, Dean snapped. I just replaced it. They stepped out into the humid night. The corn rustled in the wind, a dry, whispering sound that sounded too much like voices. But the threat that emerged wasn't the clown. From the tall stalks, 4 figures emerged. They moved with the predatory grace of apex hunters. Vampires. But these weren't the feral strays they usually hunted. This was a organized nest. The leader, a tall man in a leather duster with a mouthful of jagged teeth, smiled. Winchesters, the vampire hissed. We smelled you the second you crossed the county line. You bring heat. Police. FBI, you're bad for business. Wrong night, guys, Dean said, pulling his machete from the trunk. He was almost relieved. Vampires he could handle. Vampires made sense. Walk away, and you get to keep your heads. The vampires laughed. They fanned out, circling the brothers. It was a standard ambush, 4 against 2. Dean raised his machete. Sam drew his dead man's blood syringe. Dinner is served. The leader snarled, lunging for Dean. Then, the world stopped. The air pressure dropped so sharply that the vampires stumbled, clutching their ears. The sound of a calliope organ blasted from nowhere, loud, distorted, grinding out a corrupted circus waltz. The cornfield parted, flattened by an invisible force. Pennywise stood on the asphalt between the Winchesters and the vampires. He was pristine, white gloves gleaming in the moonlight, holding a bunch of colorful balloons. Interrupting. The clown shrieked, his voice like a rusted hinge. Rude. Rude. These are my guests. The vampire leader halted, confused. What the hell is this? A freak show? He sneered, his vampire instinct overriding his caution. Get out of the way, clown, or I'll drain you dry. Pennywise giggled. It was a terrible, wet sound. Drain me? Oh, I don't have blood, little tick. But you are full of it. The vampire leader lunged, moving with supernatural speed, claws aiming for the clown's throat. He struck, and his hand shattered. It was as if he had punched a statue made of diamond. The vampire howled, cradling his broken wrist. Pennywise didn't move. He just opened his mouth. It wasn't a bite. It was an excavation. The clown's head expanded, the jaw unhinging to reveal rows of shark-like teeth that spun like a buzzsaw. He bit the vampire leader's head off in a single fluid motion. There was a sickening crunch, and the vampire's body dropped, turning to dust instantly as the head was consumed. The other 3 vampires froze. Vampires don't feel fear often. They are the top of the food chain. But they felt it now. They looked at the creature that had just eaten their alpha equivalent like a grape. Run! One of them screamed. Popcorn! Pennywise shouted, clapping his gloved hands. The clown's arms stretched. They elongated like rubber, shooting across the highway with impossible speed. Giant white-gloved hands grabbed 2 of the fleeing vampires by the ankles. With a casual flick of his wrists, Pennywise smashed them together. The impact sounded like 2 watermelons being dropped from a roof. The vampires exploded into gore and dust. The last vampire, a young female, fell to her knees, paralyzed by a terror so absolute it overrode her biology. Pennywise retracted his arms, stepping over the remains of her kin. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. "Are you afraid?" he whispered. "Yes," she whimpered. "Good," Pennywise said. "Fear makes the meat salty." He inhaled. He didn't bite her. He breathed in. The vampire gasped, her eyes turning white, her skin shriveling as her essence. The dark supernatural vitality that animated her was sucked out of her pores like smoke. In seconds, she was a husk, a dried-out relic that crumbled into ash. Dean and Sam stood by the Impala, weapons lowered, frozen. They had killed vampires by the hundreds. They had never seen them exterminated like insects. Pennywise turned to them. His face was smeared with vampire dust. He wiped his mouth delicately with a white handkerchief. "Appetizers," the clown said, winking. "But don't worry, I'm saving room for the main course." He pointed a gloved finger at Dean, then at Sam. "Sleep tight, boys. The nightmares are just beginning." The clown burst into a flurry of red balloons that floated upward and popped one by one, leaving the highway empty and silent. The Impala's engine roared back to life on its own. They drove back to the motel in silence. The hierarchy of their world had just been shattered. Vampires were monsters. This thing was a god. Back at the sleepy silo, the psychological toll began to collect its due. Sam went into the bathroom to splash water on his face. He gripped the porcelain sink, staring into the drain, trying to slow his heart rate. "It's just a monster," he told himself. "We figure out the law. We kill it." He looked up at the mirror. Mark Pellegrino was standing behind him. Sam spun around, heart hammering against his ribs. The bathroom was empty. He turned back to the mirror. Lucifer was still there, leaning against the doorframe in the reflection, picking his teeth with a bone shard. "Hiya, Sammy," the reflection said. But the voice wasn't Pellegrino's smooth drawl. It was the clown's voice, pitching up and down. "Did you miss me? The cage is so lonely. It's so cold. And you left a piece of yourself there, didn't you?" The reflection of Lucifer began to peel. The skin of his face sloughed off like wet paper, revealing the clown's white grease paint underneath. "You're broken, Sam," the reflection hissed. "You're a cracked vessel. I can see the cracks. I can fit inside them." Sam smashed his fist into the mirror. The glass shattered, spiderwebbing the image, but the laughter continued, echoing from the shards. "No!" Sam yelled, squeezing his eyes shut. "You're not real. Get out of my head." When he opened his eyes, the mirror was just broken glass. His hand was bleeding. Outside, by the ice machine, Dean was trying to find his courage in the bottom of a flask. The night air was thick, suffocating. He leaned his head against the cold metal of the machine. "Dean." The voice was low, authoritative, a voice he hadn't heard in years, a voice that still made him feel 6 years old. Dean turned slowly. Standing by the vending machine, bathed in the flickering neon light, was John Winchester. He looked exactly as he had the day he died, leather jacket, stern face, eyes full of disappointment. "Dad?" Dean whispered, the flask slipping from his fingers. "Look at you," John said. "He didn't walk, he glided. Look at what you've become. A drunk, a failure. You couldn't save me. You couldn't save Mom. You get everyone killed, Dean. Joe Ellen, Kevin, Charlie. Everyone who stands next to you dies." "Shut up," Dean choked out. He knew it wasn't him. He knew. But the words, they were the exact words he whispered to himself at 3 a.m. John stepped closer, his face twisting. The eyes turned yellow, the mouth widened. "You're poison, Dean. You should have stayed on the rack. You liked it there, didn't you? You liked the pain because it was the only time you felt clean." Dean drew his gun, leveling it at his father's chest. His hand was shaking uncontrollably. "You're not him. I am you, the thing that looked like John whispered. I am everything you hate about yourself." The figure dissolved into a swarm of moths that battered against Dean's face, choking him, blinding him. He swatted them away, stumbling back, gasping for air. When the moths cleared, he was alone in the parking lot. The door to the motel room opened. Sam stood there, hand wrapped in a bloody towel. Dean stood by the ice machine, pale and trembling. They looked at each other, two men who had saved the world, now utterly dismantled by their own shadows. "You okay?" Sam asked, his voice hollow. Dean picked up his flask, his eyes dead. "Peachy," he lied. "Just getting ice." "Me too," Sam lied. "Just cut myself shaving." They went back inside, locking the door against the night. But they both knew the lock didn't matter. The monster was already inside the room. It was inside them. The silence inside room 114 of the Sleepy Silo Motel was louder than the storm battering the roof. It was a dense, suffocating silence, the kind that hangs between two men who are drowning in the same ocean, but are too proud to ask for a life raft. Dean sat at the small round table, cleaning his gun. He stripped the slide, wiped the pin, reassembled it. Strip, wipe, assemble. The mechanical click-clack rhythm was the only thing keeping his hands from shaking. Sam sat on the edge of his bed, his bandaged hand resting on his knee, staring at the blank screen of the television. They were beaten. They knew it. They had faced the devil. They had killed death. They had fought big monsters. But those threats, as cosmic as they were, operated on rules. You could stab them, trap them, or talk them down. This thing, this dancing nightmare, didn't play by rules. It didn't just hurt you, it unmade you. It took the darkest, wettest parts of your soul and wore them like a mask. "We're missing something," Sam said, his voice rasping like sandpaper. He didn't look up. Cross's journal. The vampire nest, the way it ate them. "It feeds on fear, Dean. That's the fuel." "Yeah, Sammy, I got the memo," Dean snapped, sliding the magazine back into his Taurus with a harsh metallic snap. "It eats fear. We're scared. Ergo, we're lunch." Great analysis. "No." Sam stood up, pacing the small length of the room. "The vampires. The leader, he wasn't afraid until the clown broke his hand. He was arrogant. He attacked. And for a second it didn't react. It only got strong after the fear set in. When the other vamps ran, that's when it got powerful enough to stretch like rubber." Dean looked up, eyes narrowed. "So what? We just walk in there and pretend we're not crapping our pants?" "I saw Dad. Sam. I saw him tell me I was garbage. You think I can just switch that off?" "We can't switch it off," Sam said. "But maybe we can." Interrupted. A knock at the door made them both flinch. Dean had his gun leveled at the wood before the second knock sounded. "It's me," a gravelly voice came from the other side. Dean lowered the weapon and unlocked the door. Castiel stood in the rain, trench coat soaked, face grim. He didn't offer a greeting. He stepped inside, bringing the smell of ozone and wet pavement with him. He looked at Sam's bandaged hand, then at Dean's hollow eyes. "You look terrible," the angel said flatly. "Nice to see you too, Cass." Dean muttered, locking the door again. "Did you find anything in the heavenly archives? Or just more red tape?" Castiel moved to the center of the room. "I spoke to the scribe of the Metatron. There are footnotes, fragments of lore from before the creation of the host. The entity you are facing is a stray thought from the Macroverse, a parasite. It binds itself to a single reality at a time, obeying the psychological laws of the dominant species. English, Cass, Dean said. It relies on your perception to exist physically, Castiel explained, his blue eyes intense. It is vast, yes, infinite perhaps, but to manifest here, to touch you, it must compress itself into a shape you understand. A spider, a clown, a father. It wears your mind. If you accept the shape, you accept the rules of that shape. If you fear the teeth become sharp. And if we don't? Sam asked. Then it is just light, Castiel said. Dangerous, maddening light. But light cannot bite your head off. Dean laughed. A short, bitter bark. So that's the plan? We go down to the sewer, stare at the cosmic horror, and just disbelieve it to death? I do not believe in fairies? Come on. Not disbelieve, Sam said, a realization dawning. He grabbed his jacket. We need to go to the hospital. Now. Hollowbrook General was a small, underfunded facility that smelled of bleach and hopelessness. Sheriff Duval met them in the waiting room, looking even more haggard than before. She's awake, Duval said, leading them down a sterile corridor. Emma Vasquez. Found her wandering near the drainage pipe 2 hours ago. She hasn't spoken a word until 10 minutes ago. They found the girl sitting up in bed, staring out the window at the rain. She was 16, thin, with dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises. Her hands were gripping the bedsheet so tight her knuckles were white. Emma? Sam asked softly, stepping into the room. I'm Agent Rose. This is Agent Slash. We want to ask you about the clown. Emma didn't turn. He's not a clown, she whispered. He's everything. How did you get away, Emma? Dean asked. He kept his voice gentle, stripping away the tough guy veneer. He needed to know. Everyone else, they didn't come back. How did you? Emma turned slowly. Her eyes were haunted, but there was a spark of something else in there. Anger. He showed me, she said, her voice trembling. He showed me my little sister, who died in a car crash 3 years ago. He was wearing her clothes. He was mimicking her voice, screaming for help. And you were scared, Sam said. I was terrified, Emma nodded. I was crying. He came closer. His mouth opened, but then... She frowned, remembering. Then he tripped. Dean blinked. He tripped? His big, stupid shoe, Emma said, a faint, hysterical smile touching her lips. He tripped over a pipe. He flailed. He looked so ridiculous. For a second he wasn't a monster. He was just a stupid clown in a sewer, and I laughed. I couldn't help it. I just laughed. The room went silent. What happened when you laughed? Castiel asked, stepping forward. He shrank, Emma said. Just for a second. He looked small, confused, like a dog that got kicked. The light in his throat dimmed. And I ran. I just ran and didn't look back. Dean looked at Sam. The pieces clicked into place. The vampire leader's arrogance. The clown tripping. It wasn't just about not fearing. It was about contempt. It was about taking the nightmare and reducing it to a joke. Ridicule. Dean muttered. We have to laugh at the devil. They drove back to the waterworks in the Impala. The mood had shifted. The fear was still there, thick, heavy, nauseating, but it was no longer steering the car. I saw Dad, Dean said suddenly, breaking the silence. He gripped the steering wheel tight. In the parking lot. He told me I was poison. He told me I killed Mum. He told me I liked the torture in hell. Sam looked at his brother. I saw Lucifer, he admitted quietly. In the mirror. He told me I was still in the cage. That I was broken. That I was a vessel for him and nothing else. It knows the buttons to push, Dean said, staring at the road. "It knows the script." "So we change the script," Sam said. "We don't go in there alone. We stay together. If it tries to isolate us, we don't let it. If it tries to show us the worst things we can imagine, we make fun of its shoes," Dean finished, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. They pulled up to the fence. The Millbrook Waterworks loomed in the darkness, a concrete tomb waiting to be opened. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a heavy, mist-laden silence. Castiel got out of the back seat. He produced an angel blade from his sleeve. "I cannot enter the Deadlights," he warned. "My grace is incompatible. If I look at the core of the entity, it may shatter my vessel. I will guard the threshold. I will try to hold the physical reality of this place together so it does not trap you in a labyrinth." "Thanks, Cass," Dean said. He went to the trunk. He didn't reach for the shotgun. He reached for a crowbar. Solid, heavy, brutal. Sam grabbed a flare gun and a machete. "Ready?" Dean looked at the dark opening of the sewer. He could feel the cold radiating from it. He could hear the faint, distant sound of carnival music playing backward. He was terrified. He was more scared than he had been facing Amara. Because Amara just wanted to destroy the world, this thing wanted to prove that Dean Winchester was worthless. "No," Dean said honestly. "But let's go kill this clown anyway." They descended. The tunnels were different this time. The graffiti on the walls had changed. Instead of gang tags, the spray paint formed words over and over again. "It's your fault, Dean. You failed Sammy. Your blood is tainted." "Don't read it," Sam said, shining his light straight ahead. "It's just scenery." "Tacky scenery," Dean grunted, forcing a scoff. "Guy needs a decorator." The air grew colder. The smell of ozone and cotton candy intensified. They reached the central cistern again. The water was black and still. The pile of debris in the center had grown. It was now a mountain of old toys, bicycles, and shoes. Thousands of them. Trophies from other worlds, other times. "Come out," Dean yelled, his voice echoing off the curved walls. "We know you're home. We saw your balloon." Bubbles broke the surface of the water. Slowly, agonizingly, it rose. But it wasn't the clown this time. It was Mary Winchester. She was wearing her white nightgown, stained red in the center. She floated above the water, her eyes burning with that yellow dead light. "Dean," the thing said, and it used her voice. It was perfect. It was the voice that had haunted Dean's dreams for 30 years. "Why did you let me burn, Dean? Why didn't you save me?" Dean froze. His grip on the crowbar loosened. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. It was so real. The smell of her perfume, vanilla and smoke, wafted across the water. "Dean, don't," Sam warned, stepping closer, shoulder to shoulder with his brother. Sammy, the Mary thing, turned her gaze. "My poor baby. Fed demon blood. Defiled. You were never mine, were you? You always belonged to the dark." The water churned. Behind Mary, a second figure rose. John Winchester, then Jessica, then Kevin Tran, then Charlie Bradbury, a gallery of the dead. Every failure Dean and Sam had ever carried, standing on the water, staring at them with hateful yellow eyes. "Look at them," John Thing boomed. "Look at your legacy, boys. Death. Ruin. You aren't heroes. You're a disease." Dean began to shake. The sheer weight of it, the visual confirmation of his deepest self-loathing, was crushing him. He lowered the crowbar. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to beg. Then Sam's hand clamped onto his shoulder. "Hard." "Dean," Sam said, his voice cutting through the fog. "Look at Dad's boots." Dean blinked, tears blurring his vision. "What?" "His boots," Sam pointed. "He's wearing clown shoes." Dean looked down. Beneath the spectral, terrifying form of John Winchester, the entity's concentration had slipped. The feet were massive, floppy, red plastic shoes with yellow laces. Dean let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He looked at Mary. She was holding a rubber chicken instead of a weapon. "You seeing this?" Dean asked, and the tremble in his voice stabilized. "I see it," Sam said. "It's a bad costume party, Dean." The ghosts flickered. The John thing roared. "Do not mock me. I am the Eater of Worlds." "You're a hack," Dean shouted back, stepping forward. He raised the crowbar. "And you know what? You're ugly too." He didn't fire a gun. He didn't recite a Latin incantation. He hurled an insult. And for the first time since they arrived in Hollowbrook, the monster flinched. The illusion of John Winchester rippled like a bad TV signal, revealing the white grease paint and the pom-poms underneath. "Together," Sam said, raising the machete. "Together," Dean agreed. They stepped into the water. The water in the cistern was freezing, a slurry of filth and stagnation that soaked through denim and chilled the bone, but Dean Winchester didn't feel the cold. He felt a burning white-hot clarity. The fear was still there, coiled in his gut like a viper, but he had grabbed the viper by the neck. Beside him, Sam moved with the same grim determination, the flare gun gripped in his bandaged hand, the machete in the other. The illusion of John Winchester towered over them, a grotesque parody of fatherhood, but the oversized red shoes squeaked against the surface tension of the water. The spectral Mary Winchester wailed, her mouth stretching too wide, but she was holding that rubber chicken, waving it like a weapon. The absurdity was the armor. "You're a joke." Dean shouted, his voice cracking with the strain of shouting down his own nightmares. He swung the crowbar through the air, splashing dirty water at the phantoms. "You hear me? You're a bad dream with a budget deficit." The John thing roared, but the sound wasn't the terrifying bass of a disappointed father anymore. It was the frustrated shriek of a spoiling child. The image flickered, static lines tearing through the leather jacket, and then exploded into a cloud of moths. Pennywise stood revealed in the center of the cistern. The clown was no longer pristine. The ruffles were damp and sagging. The grease paint was smeared, revealing gray alien flesh beneath. It hissed, scrambling backward onto the pile of debris. "You are meat," it screeched, saliva dripping from its chin. "I am the World Eater. I am the nightmare." "You're a tourist," Sam countered, stepping forward. He raised the flare gun. "And you're trespassing." Sam pulled the trigger. The flare hissed through the dark. A streak of magnesium fire. It struck the clown in the shoulder. In a world of pure physics, a flare might just burn cloth, but here, fueled by Sam's absolute refusal to be a victim, the fire caught. Pennywise shrieked, a sound that shattered the remaining glass in the overhead fixtures as the white fire ate into its shoulder. "It burns." The clown howled, slapping at the flames. "Why does it burn?" "You are afraid. I can smell it." "Yeah, we're scared," Dean said, closing the distance, the water churning around his thighs. "We're always scared. That's the job. You think you're special because you know what we're afraid of? Get in line, bozo. We deal with the apocalypse every Tuesday." Pennywise's eyes shifted, the irises spinning independently. It realized with a dawning alien horror that the prey was not running. The prey was hunting. The entity abandoned the clown form. It needed power. It needed to be something too big to ridicule. With a sound like tearing wet canvas, the clown's body split. Limbs erupted from the torso, long, chitinous, spider-like legs tipped with obsidian spikes. The head remained, but it swelled, the jaw unhinging to reveal a throat that went on forever. The creature reared up, 20 feet tall, pressing against the vaulted ceiling of the cistern. "Witness!" The spider clown boomed, its voice vibrating the very concrete of the walls. The deadlights opened. The orange glow didn't just illuminate the room, it rewrote it. It was a light that tasted like aluminum and felt like gravity. Dean shielded his eyes, staggering back as the pressure wave hit him. But Sam looked. Sam looked straight into the throat of the beast. Instantly, Sam was gone. His body was there, standing in the water, but his mind was yanked out, pulled into the Macroverse. He was falling through an orange void, surrounded by billions of screaming souls. He saw the cage again. He saw the fire. He saw Lucifer's face, not as a hallucination, but as a memory so vivid it burned his skin. The sensation of falling was absolute. He was small. He was nothing. He was just a speck of dust in the eye of an angry god. Float, the voices whispered. Just let go and float. Back in the cistern, Dean saw Sam's eyes roll back, saw his brother's knees buckle. Sam. Dean yelled, the sound torn from his throat. The spider clown chittered, its massive legs stabbing down, trying to skewer Dean. Dean rolled, the obsidian spike missing him by inches, shattering the concrete floor beneath the water. He scrambled up, swinging the crowbar. He struck the creature's leg. Clang. It felt like hitting a tank, but a crack appeared in the chitin. "He is mine." The entity laughed, the sound wet and gargling. "His mind is soft, broken. I will suck the marrow from his soul." Dean didn't think. He didn't plan. He dropped the crowbar and lunged for his brother. He grabbed Sam by the jacket, shaking him violently. "Sammy, wake up!" Dean screamed. The deadlights were beating down on them, radiation that promised madness. Dean felt his own mind starting to fray, the edges of his vision filling with orange static. He saw his own failures, his own deaths, looping forever. But he held on. He held on to the jacket. He held on to the one truth that had survived hell, purgatory, and the dark. Sam and Dean. "You don't get him." Dean roared at the light. He wasn't talking to a monster anymore, he was talking to the universe. "You don't get him. He's my brother." In the void, Sam heard the voice. It wasn't the voice of God or an angel, it was Dean. Gruff, terrified, angry Dean. The sound was a tether. Sam grabbed it. He stopped falling. He looked at the orange madness surrounding him, at the cage, at the fire. "No." Sam whispered in the dark. He clenched his fist. The sensation of the leather grip of the machete returned to his hand. "I've been to hell," Sam shouted, and the void shook. "I've been tortured by the devil himself. You're just a light bulb." Sam opened his eyes in the cistern. The deadlights were still there, blinding and terrible, but Sam didn't blink. He swung the machete. It was a clumsy swing, fueled by desperation and adrenaline, but it was true. The blade, blessed by nothing but the will of a Winchester, bit deep into the creature's lower mandible. Pennywise screamed, a sound that wasn't human, wasn't animal. It was the sound of a tear in reality shrieking as it was forced shut. Black ichor sprayed across the brothers, burning like acid. The spider clown recoiled, thrashing, smashing against the walls. The water churned into a frenzy. "You hurt me," it wailed, shrinking, the spider legs folding in, the giant form collapsing back into the shape of the man in the silver suit. The clown fell into the water, splashing, scrambling away from them. It looked small. It looked pathetic. "Why? Why aren't you afraid?" "We are," Dean panted, wiping sludge from his eyes. He picked up the crowbar again. "We're just angry, too." They advanced. Step by step, the clown backed away, crab walking up the pile of debris. "Stay back." Pennywise hissed. "I am eternal. I am." "You're done," Dean said. He swung the crowbar, smashing it into the clown's knee. There was a sickening crunch of bone, or whatever passed for bone. Pennywise fell, whimpering. It looked at them, and for the first time, the hunger in its eyes was gone, replaced by the one thing it had weaponized for eons: fear. It was terrified of these two mortal men who carried so much darkness that they had become poisonous to eat. "You taste like old iron," Pennywise whispered, shrinking further, its form flickering, becoming translucent. "Like sour milk. Bitter. Bitter meat." The entity realized it could not win. To eat them, it had to make them believe in its supremacy. But they didn't believe in it. They believed in each other. With a final hateful hiss, the clown dissolved. Not into dust, but into a stream of foul-smelling orange gas. The gas swirled, trying to reform, but the pressure of the brothers' presence was too much. It shot upward, screaming toward the ceiling, seeking the breach, seeking the void, seeking anywhere but here. The ground shook. The Millbrook waterworks groaned. The breach was closing, and it was taking the structural integrity of the lair with it. "Go!" Sam yelled. They turned and ran. Concrete rained down around them. Pipes burst, spraying steam and sewage. They scrambled up the intake tunnel, slipping on the slime, lungs burning. The roar of the collapsing cistern behind them sounded like a beast dying. They burst out of the tunnel mouth just as the earth behind them subsided. The ground swallowed the entrance to the waterworks, sealing it under tons of Kansas dirt and concrete. They collapsed on the wet grass, gasping for air, covered in black ichor and sewer filth. The rain had stopped. To the east, the sky was turning a bruised purple. Dawn. Dean rolled onto his back, staring up at the sky. His chest heaved. He checked his limbs. Still attached. He looked at Sam. Sam was sitting up, staring at the mound of earth that used to be the entrance. "Did we kill it?" Dean wheezed. Sam shook his head slowly, wiping slime from his face. "No. I don't think you can kill a thing like that with a machete. But we hurt it. We made it afraid. It ran," Dean agreed, taking its ball and going home. Castile stepped out from behind the tree line. He looked exhausted, his trench coat muddy, his eyes dim. The angel slumped against the trunk of the Impala. "The breach is sealed," Castile rasped. "The entity has retreated to the space between spaces. It will not return here. It has learned that this reality has teeth." Dean laughed. It was a painful, wheezing sound, but it was real. He sat up, groaning. "Yeah, it learned that Winchesters give 'em indigestion." They sat there for a long time as the sun broke over the horizon, painting the cornfields in gold. The darkness of the night, the oppressive weight that had hung over Hollowbrook, began to lift. The air felt lighter. The static was gone. "You okay?" Sam asked, looking at his brother. He wasn't asking about the injuries. He was asking about the parking lot. About John. Dean looked at the sunrise. He thought about the words the clown had spoken with his father's voice. "Your poison." He felt the weight of it, heavy and familiar. But he also felt Sam's hand on his jacket, pulling him back from the edge. "I'm good," Dean lied, but it was a softer lie than usual. He stood up and offered a hand to Sam. "Come on, let's get out of this town. I need a shower, a drink, and a burger. In that order." Sam took the hand. "I think the motel sunk with the sewer, Dean." "Then we drive," Dean said, patting the roof of the Impala. "We drive until we find a place that doesn't smell like clown." They climbed into the car. The engine turned over with a roar that sounded like victory. As they pulled away onto the highway, leaving the ruins of the waterworks behind, Dean looked in the rearview mirror. For a second, just a split second, he thought he saw a red balloon caught in the branches of a tree. He blinked, and it was gone. Just a trick of the light. "Bitch," Dean muttered to the empty road. Jerk, Sam replied automatically, leaning his head against the window. The Impala sped down the highway, chasing the sun. Two brothers keeping the dark at bay, one nightmare at a time.